Welcome to the Victims Advocate podcast, where we explore current events, crime, security, and insights into advocacy for victims of violent crime. My name is Brandon Stein, and I am the Victims Advocate. Helping victims of violent crime is what I do, and you can find me at www.steinlaw.com or www.victimadvocate.com. Let's hit it. Michael Zwick is here. Michael, thanks for taking the time. At least I know you're super busy, but I do appreciate you taking the time with us today.
My pleasure to be here, Brandon.
Yeah. So, Michael, before we get into a couple of things I want to discuss with you that's just really, really interesting in what you do. But my understanding is you are what I call a recovering lawyer, a lawyer who doesn't practice law anymore, but still has your license, and you're a former lawyer. But now you're in private practice related to investigations and in the probate or asset location context. Yeah.
So I practiced law for about 7 years after I got out of law school, and in the last year or two I'd started what I do now as a kind of a side hustle before side hustle was a thing. Started a business finding first people who have money in government agencies, and then over time expanded that into finding also people who have money coming to them from inheritances. So
tell me, before this, though, you were working for as an attorney. You were practicing law, right?
Yes, I did mostly criminal defense, bankruptcy, some plaintiff litigation, and that was pretty much what I did. Nothing to do with probate whatsoever.
Right, so nothing to do with probate, but then one day you woke up and you said, you know what, I want to start searching for assets and heirs. Is that as simple as that?
It was more of hey, there's this thing out, there's money out there, let's see if we can both find some owners. And it just kind of snowballed to the point that after about 2 years, I was really burning the candle at both ends in terms of my law practice and this business. I was getting married to my now wife. This was almost 21 years ago. And I was, working like a dog, and this is not how I wanted to be in my marriage, where I was going to be at the office every night till 10 o'clock. So, and the business was going well enough, and I was starting to get burned out by certain aspects of the practice of law.
So the way you transitioned was you were still working in the legal context, as a attorney by day, but then by night you were doing these crazy asset and heir searches.
Yeah, well, it wasn't day and night. It was kind of like whatever fit into the schedule at a particular time. So I actually did with two partners. We all had our day jobs. I had my law practice. One was a teacher, and the other one had a videography business. So we all kind of just started as a little side thing whenever each of us could fit into our schedule. We had had our silo of tasks that we did. I was obviously the legal part of analyzing court documents and drafting contracts and handling claims. So, and we got to the point about after 2 years, we said, we got something here. Let's go in full time and just, leave behind our day jobs.
Yeah. So was there anything in your legal practice that prepares you for, because first of all, for me, what I would do, I guess I would start Google searching. I don't know. But was there anything in your professional practice as a lawyer that you had acquired skills that can transfer over to this new career that you decide to undertake?
There definitely are some. One is just knowing how to look for and read statutes and case law, because even though I'm not practicing law, statutes and court opinions definitely have impact on what we do. And I'll give you a perfect example. We do a lot of finding money in government agencies. So we do where there are surpluses after auctions, where someone's property goes into foreclosure and there's money beyond what the creditor is owed, and that money's just sitting there. Well, there was actually a U.S. Supreme Court case that came down about 2 years ago on this very particular subject of what happens to that extra money. Because in some states, including Michigan and Minnesota was the subject of this case, had laws that said that any extra money, the county gets to keep it if it's a tax foreclosure. It doesn't go. So in the Michigan case, a guy underpaid by $8 on a tax bill, and the county, Oakland County, which is right outside Detroit, foreclosed on the house, and there was something like a $70,000 surplus there. And the taxpayer said, listen, I get that it's foreclosed. I'm not contesting that, but give me my $70,000 that's extra. And the county says, no, it's ours. And he took it to the state Supreme Court. State Supreme Court ruled in his favor. In Minnesota, a similar case went up to the U.S. Supreme Court. So knowing how to read that case, has a big impact.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it puts you, on second base compared to maybe other investigators in this same practice area.
Yeah.
But so this is obviously a niche area, and when you hear about investigators or people who are searching, you're thinking maybe in the criminal context you have them searching, related to crimes or criminal acts that occur, terroristic acts. But in your context, it's really a lot of it's, I mean, you've recovered a lot of money for your clients around the world, like hundreds of millions of dollars. Am I wrong?
You are not wrong. We actually just yesterday got paid three clients on a case. Each got $1 million. There were heirs in a case out of Pennsylvania where a woman died and nobody knew who her heirs were. The attorney who was handling the case reached out to us and said, I don't know who her heirs are. Can you find them? And we found them, and they just literally check one out yesterday.
Yeah, I think it was an Adam Sandler movie, maybe. I think it was an Adam Sandler movie where he came into some money, a long lost uncle, and all of a sudden he's like a billionaire. So it's obviously not as humorous or comical as that, but it's the same idea where sometimes it's situations where there's hundreds of millions of dollars in assets, and you need to find who it goes to.
Right. Well, you say about funny, but actually there is a phrase called the laughing heir. Which is somebody who has just sitting there minding their own business one day, gets a knock on the door, whether for us or from an attorney or whatever, saying, hey, great news. Well, bad news, you have this long lost relative passed away. Good news, you're inheriting whatever, however, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, whatever. And obviously the person's laughing. So it is kind of funny. Obviously, sometimes there are those mixed emotions where the person had a relationship with the person, but didn't know that they had died. And I've been there had that front row seat to talk to those people and break that bad news before giving them the good news.
So you're the one who physically goes out or makes a phone call or knocks on a door and gives them the news where it's kind of bittersweet?
Well, I have a team. So we have a bunch of people, representatives from our company who will contact somebody. Usually if it's going to be a face-to-face meeting, because one of the things that we have to deal with is skepticism. People can be very skeptical when we call them and say, hey, we got great news for you. We got this money for you coming your way. They're going to be skeptical. Sometimes people want to have that face-to-face meeting to be reassured that we're legitimate. So I'll have that face-to-face meeting. Sometimes it's at their home. Sometimes it's at a neutral site because they don't want some stranger showing up at their house. Sometimes it'll be at our office. Depends, what the circumstances are.
Yeah, and because you hear about, a prince in some obscure country in Africa wants to send you money, give me your wire instructions, right? So there's obviously wire fraud that runs rampant, throughout the world. So are there certain, red tape that you have to cross for these potential recipients where you tell them, hey, this is why you can trust me because of X, Y, and Z?
Right. So we've made a very concerted effort over the years to combat skepticism because we've long said that's our biggest competition, not another company.
Yeah.
So we make sure when we send that in agreement to somebody, it's coming on with a cover letter on our stationery, whether it's PDF or hard copy, and we tout our credentials that I'm one of few licensed attorneys in the company. We're licensed and bonded to private investigation agency, A+ rating with Better Business Bureau. We usually will include a reprint of a Washington Post article where we're favorably mentioned. We have what we call our brag sheet, which is our kind of some of our credentials, like how much money we've recovered, and we also do some corporate work for companies. So some of the major corporations that we've represented. So usually that does the job. But like I said, some people still need that little extra reassurance, which I totally understand. I don't begrudge them if they have that concern.
So let me ask you, because I'm always curious into the process of things, because what we're talking about now is the end result. Hey, I found you X amount of money, and this is why I think I know you're entitled to it because of either genealogy or what have you. So is there a particular process that you undertake in your cases when you get, the phone call for the new lead? Okay, this is where I need to start. This is what we have to look into. I'm curious into the investigative process that you have to undertake to really come to that successful result at the end of the day.
So there's really no one particular path we take. It really depends on the circumstances. First of all, it always depends on whether you're talking about money for one particular identified heir that just don't know where he is versus a class of people, like in the one I mentioned, this big one we just got paid this week, where we're starting from scratch with no known heirs. So, in that case, we had to start, okay, this woman, we know she was an only child, and had no children who survived her. Both of her children passed away before her. So we had to get into, okay, let's figure out who her parents were based on death certificates and census records and stuff like that. And then figure, okay, did they have siblings? And did those siblings have any children? And kind of create the family tree using genealogical records. In other cases, it might be a particular person. So there we'll go more into databases that we subscribe to that have information on current people, like look up, Brandon Stein of Broward County. I could look up, and I don't know if there's only one, could be more than one. And then from there, say, okay, look where Brandon Stein is now living. You could have moved, just hypothetically, moved out to Fresno, California, and it can find on that database what your current information is. Or it could be, who knows what happens. Sometimes somebody's, left the country, so the person might have gone into the judicial judicial correctional system, and who knows where they might be homeless. Who knows? Never know where it's going to lead us.
Yeah, it's really a puzzle. Here's my perception. I mean, I could be crazy, but when a case comes in or a potential matter comes in, you look at it like a puzzle. Okay, this is where I have to start. It's almost like, an Indiana Jones or something where, all right, I'm trying to get the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. How do I get there? There's different pieces to the puzzle, and I can't go to step 3 without completing step 1 and 2.
Right. So what we do, I like to say, is it's part science, part art, part luck. Part of it is just like knowing the research. There's a lot of information out there. It's just knowing where the information is and connecting things, and just knowing where things are. I mean, I'm definitely know I'm much more advanced than I was 10 years ago in terms of how to research a case and what the resources available, but also more resources are becoming available on a daily basis because, genealogical services like Ancestry are every day adding more and more records to their database, which can always help.
We've all heard Ancestry.com or what have you. So part of your investigation is merely, hey, I have a subscription or some sort of, account with Ancestry.com, and I use that for genealogy or something.
Right. So that's one of the many tools in the toolbox. But, not to toot my own horn, but it's not just a matter of having the tool, it's also knowing how to use it. Like, we all have a hammer in our house. Yeah. But some know how to use it much better than others. Yeah. And I'm one of those others.
Right. Sometimes we hire people to use the hammer, so we don't break our finger. So you have all the tools, and you decide on a case-by-case basis, hey, this is what this case calls for. This is the type of investigation that I need to undergo, and this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for assets. I'm looking for heirs, and then you take it from there.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier, corporate clients. I thought I heard you say that. So yes. My question is, when I think of what you do and the investigation aspect and looking for heirs, looking for assets, we think of, like you say, the laughing heir or whatever, however you categorize it. How do companies or corporations come into the fold?
Right. So I mentioned in the beginning, we do what's called unclaimed property recovery, and I'll explain for your listeners what unclaimed property is. Yeah. Any asset that is held for one party for another that is sitting there for too long has to be turned over to the state. So, for example, I used to live in Michigan. I now live in Florida. When I left Michigan, if I didn't get that deposit from the utility company, or I left the bank account behind, whatever, those assets are supposed to be turned over to the state. So for individuals, having a side, because my company only deals with stuff in the 5 figures or more of recovery. So if so an individual like you or me it's very unlikely that more than once in our life, if that many, will have unclaimed property that's sizable waiting for us. A corporation that is, or nonprofit, a university that is doing tens of billions of dollars a year of revenue, or even just single billions of revenue, they're getting checks in all the time, and they're going to all different PO boxes. Some of those checks are just going to go uncashed. And it sounds crazy, but a check for $100,000, $200,000 that goes uncashed, some of this doesn't get missed. When you're talking about a company like that, there's $50 billion a year in revenue, six-figure checks are not a big deal, like in and of themselves. The company wants them.
It's all relative, right?
Right. So we have some large corporate clients, including nonprofits, that will retain us or have retained us to proactively check all these different sites that have money waiting for them to see what's out there and to handle the claim for them.
So is it purely, when we're talking companies, I don't know, the Dow Chemical or
Well, it's
Apple,
funny you mention that because they were our first corporate client was Dow Chemical.
Well, there you go. All right, so let's use that as an example. So Dow Chemical, is it usually unclaimed? Is that like what when they hire you, when they need your services, it's exclusively that? It's not to locate heirs or anything like that, right?
That's just for their money. So
yeah,
what happened? We found about $500,000 for Dow Chemical. We went to them. We said, hey, we found this money for you. They hired us, and then they said, hey, you guys did such a great job. Would you be our regular asset recovery firm and find our stuff all over the place? So next year we found Portland, Oregon, had issued a check a few years back to them for $100,000 for purchase of whatever chemicals, and this Dow never cashed the check. So we on Dow's behalf, we went to the city and said, "Can you reissue a new check to them for $100,000?" And we got it paid to Dow.
So when Dow hires you, do they know what you're looking for? Meaning, hey, there's a $172,000 check in this state or this county. I need you to find it. Or is it more of a blanketed thing? Canvass this area and see what you can find.
No, Dow knows they. It's just the nature of the beast of some money is going to slip through the cracks with them. The analogy I give is, if you eat when you're eating popcorn and you eat one kernel at a time, you're probably not going to leave any crumbs behind. But if you're shoveling in popcorn, some's going to fall on the floor. And if you imagine each piece of popcorn is a check, and you're shoveling those checks in, and some fall on the floor, my job is to look on the floor and find those checks. Now the problem is those checks might be who knows where else. So, like I said, we get lists from government agencies from all across the country, from state, federal, county, city, whatever, including uncashed checks. So that's where we're going to find stuff for corporations.
But they don't have people. They don't have bookkeepers, accountants who manage this money, these accounts receivables that are supposed to come in. It's wild to me that they just have checks, like you say, could be hundreds of thousands of dollars that are coming in. Oh, it's okay. It's just like pennies coming in. We'll hire someone to find it for us.
I can't address how the gaps happen.
Yeah.
I did work at one point, I think it was my summer right after college, for an accounts receivable for a small public company. I can see it's easy, like if you have turnover in accounts receivable, but also, you hit turnover and the records aren't transmitted very well. But you could also have, for whatever reason, for some department, whatever orders or creates some invoice or whatever. I don't know. I'm not really sure why. Sometimes it has to do with taxes. Sometimes the money we're finding are tax refunds because the company might have overpaid or double paid a property tax bill, and they're due a refund. So that's not really with accounts receivable. That could be the tax department. You never know. Like, there are so many. Yeah, you're talking about a company that has tens of thousands of employees. And the right hand's often not talking to the left hand.
Yeah, and I guess it's easier to say, hey, hire someone like you to come in, right? Right.
So some companies have somebody in-house. Part of their job is to hunt for this money. Some companies don't want to have to pay upfront because we work on a contingency basis, so we only get paid for the success we bring. But also because we're doing this every day, we know a lot of the ins and outs of all the different states. I guess every state has their own rules of what documentation you need to provide, what else you need on a claim, what letter of authority you might need. Every state has their own rules, so they know a company like mine has that ability. We know how to handle a Michigan claim versus handle a Florida claim versus a Louisiana claim.
Well, and I guess to your point that you mentioned earlier, that's where the legal experience, and the expertise comes into play. Just statute interpretation.
Right, and just like knowing the rules and knowing the people, because the people who work in those offices, they make up some of the rules as they go along. So that's where having relationships with them comes in handy. Where I can call them and they have the discretion to allow something without being as rigorous as they normally would be. And they say, "Oh well, we know you guys. We trust you. You're honest players, so we'll approve this claim." Yeah.
No, interesting stuff, man. Well, listen, I know you're incredibly busy. You're busy tracking down things like like I said, Indiana Jones. But I really appreciate the time, Michael. But what I'd like to do, and I want to make sure people know if they need to find you, or if they need you to find someone. Let's put it that way, right? Yeah. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
So they can either email me at mzwick@assetsinternational.com. That's mzwick@assetsinternational.com. Or I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm one of the, I wouldn't say an OG of LinkedIn, but I was there early enough that my thing after the slash is just mzwick, as opposed to mzwick1257342.
There we go.
I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you message me on there, DM me there, I'll see it.
Great. Well, Michael, I can't thank you enough for taking a few minutes, and just going through this, because this is something that, I love to be just educated. I think it's just incredibly interesting. Yeah. So, all right, Michael, appreciate it, my man. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brandon Stein, and I am the Victim's Advocate. Your voice matters, and if you or someone you know needs representation, visit steinlaw.com or victimadvocate.com for more information. See you next time.